Hey everybody, this is Cory again for Geometrica Tattoo App. So this is our second tutorial video. This one's going to focus in on strictly one tool, the rotation effect. So this is what you would use to make mandalas. I've drawn a series of different ones in this video, so I'm hoping that it'll give you a little bit more in-depth view than I did in the first video. And I want to showcase a bunch of different tools and techniques that can be combined with the rotation effect. So to give you a more thorough understanding of what you can do with it and hopefully give you some things to explore on your own with it. So I hope it's helpful, I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for checking it out. Okay, so we start by opening up the app. This one's in portrait mode. I'm going to start a new document that is, you have your options here. I'm going to do it in square. Since we're only doing mandalas in this tutorial, there's no real reason for the extra space at the top and bottom. Let's just make a canvas that sort of fits what we're doing. So the first mandala I'm going to do is a pretty simple one. I'm going to start off with 6 rotations in the center. I'm going to have it mirrored. I'm also going to introduce the circle ruler into this mandala at some point, at several points. I like doing 6 in the center. You don't want your centers too complicated. Otherwise it just becomes mushy when you tattoo it. Real complicated and difficult. So now that my center is finished, I'm going to turn on a circle ruler. I like to do this to kind of close it off, because I know that in the next row here of mandalas I'm going to be going up in number. So instead of having to match up the next number of segments with the 6 that I've drawn here, I've got this like break that I use the circle for. So I like to usually, if I'm at a 6, usually my next jump is going to be 12. And my next one after that will usually be 24. And the one after that usually 48. I think it keeps it real balanced and everything kind of lines up with itself if you keep your increments sort of divisible by the same number. Obviously you don't have to do that. That's just a little bit of my own theory that I'm sharing with you. So let's see, we're at like a 12 now. Oh, turn off the circle ruler by using long press. Long press means I just hold on to it for a second. When it goes red, you know it's on. And I don't have to actually open up this menu thing if I don't need to make any adjustments. So for time-saving purposes, you can use the long press. So now for the next row, I'm going to do another circle divider. Separate this one from the next row. And on the next row, I'm going to use the circle in a different way. So we're at 12 here. Let's go up to, let's go all the way up to 48 now. We'll skip 24, we'll go up to 48. Still divisible by 6, it's still going to match up real well. And then I'm going to take my circle ruler that's in the center, I'm going to move it to the outer edge. And very effective visually and very easy to do. So a quick little fun thing and a fun way that you can take advantage of the circle tool and the fact that you can move it anywhere you want. And it all works really well in line with our symmetry tools. Okay, the next mandala I'm going to draw is going to be also fairly simple, but let's put it down to 12 rotations. A lot of times I end up drawing with a thicker line when I know that what I'm going to be tattooing is the negative space. So I'm going to go in and change the thickness. Let me put it up to, I don't know, like a 33 maybe. Let's try that. Okay. So a relatively simple design as well. So with a design like this that I know I'm going to be tattooing the negative space, so basically what you see in white here, I'm going to show you a couple ways to end up with a result that is more ideal for your stencil. So first one would be to change to the bucket fill tool and fill everything on the page. So you're left with the opposite of what you'll actually tattoo. What you see in white now will be in black on the skin. So if you go into view and you click hide background, the white in there actually disappears, and what you're seeing is the background behind the drawing itself. That white doesn't actually exist in any of the layers. This is a transparent layer. So for the purpose of a stencil, I'm going to want to put actual white in there, not just the white that we've displayed to make your drawing easier. So turn that off, the view of your first drawing. Go into the active layer now, change the color to white, still with the bucket fill tool. Fill that in. So now we have a layer of true white, and we have the layer that's in black of what we drew earlier. I'm going to long press the white layer, bring it below, click on the black one to make it the active layer. And I'm going to go over to the layer menu in the top left. I'm going to merge layer down. So now we have a layer with mostly black, with your design filled in with true white. And to make a stencil, I'm going to go back to the layer menu, and I'm going to hit invert colors. Boom. So that is a much better stencil to work off of than the other one, I think, personally. So now I'll show you another way to make a better stencil for this design. Personally, I think this is the best way. So you go into layers, you lower the opacity on it, start a new layer above it, and then change your marker from thick down to thin again, maybe like an 8. And you just go in sort of manually, I guess you would call it, make the lines again. I personally find that I get the most accurate results tattooing when my stencil looks like this. So I know that, here I'm going to just delete that one or hide it from view. So you've purely just what you're going to stencil here. And then I know that I'm going to be filling in these parts when I tattoo it. But I find these sort of a double line sort of thing, I find this ends up being the most accurate. And there you go. There's 2 different ways to make better stencils when you're drawing but tattooing the negative space on real thick lined mandalas. Okay, so the next mandala, I'm going to show you how to make one using strictly the straight line tool. It doesn't really matter which amount of rotations we choose. I'm going to do this whole thing just with one. I'm not going to change it at any point. So if you're not already familiar with the straight line tool, this is how it works. You start by touching the screen with the Apple Pencil, and then you can move it around wherever you want until you take the pencil off the screen. And then once it does, your line is kind of locked in there. When you've drawn hundreds or even thousands of mandalas like I have, eventually you start to get to a point where you're drawing a lot of the same stuff. It's just sort of the way the arcs that naturally happen when you're drawing. So this takes you out of that zone and gives you things that wouldn't necessarily have happened otherwise. These are real sort of sharp looking design. A lot of very pointy angles. Let's see, I'm going to show you something else with this. Turn up the pressure sensitivity. And you pull a line with it. And then you can push down on it and it gets thicker. That's kind of a fun little trick. As you can see, it's really easy to make some pretty cool looking designs using this tool. And then I'll show you another variation on that last one. Another feature of the straight line tool is the continuous line. So click on this one at the bottom. So this added effect to the straight line tool changes it a little bit in how you use it. Same thing, you put your pencil to the screen, do your line. Once you let go, now you have two cursors, a red one at the top and a blue one at the bottom here. The red one, this is where you started. The blue one is where you left off. So this is where your next line is going to start. No matter where you put your pencil on the screen, I can put it way over here, and this is where my line is going to start. So it basically starts a sort of a circuit that it's going to keep doing this until you either end up where you started, and that closes the circuit so the cursors are gone and you can start fresh somewhere else, or it will happen until you click on the cursor where you finished. You can click on that, turn that off, and then start again somewhere else. Really neat. Might sound a little strange, but it's another fun way to draw shapes that, again, pushes you out of your comfort zone and gives you different results. So with the continuous line turned on, you can actually provide a completely different drawing experience. I like how you can almost draw just by picking out the points. So I'm going to touch the screen and I'm going to just touch down with the pencil in the next spot where I want it to end. So instead of actually having to pull the line and move it around, you can choose various points on the screen where you want it to end. I find this actually gives a very, very accurate look to the drawing. So I'm done with that one. I want to start a new one, so I'm going to click on the blue cursor. And I'm going to start it in a new spot. And I'll start another new spot up top here. Yeah, that's the kind of variety we're looking to introduce with this app. Just get you drawing out of your comfort zone, get weird results, and provide a different drawing experience if we can. So I think everything I've drawn so far has been using with the mirror enabled. Let's do this next one I'm going to do. We're going to have a little bit of mirror, but we're also going to do more drawing without the mirror enabled to see what it looks like when everything's just going in one direction. I'm also going to do a lot of this drawing using the bucket fill tool, the circle ruler, and the eraser as my drawing tool instead of the marker. Let's slide this down to 6 for my center, as I often do. I'm going to turn on the circle ruler. I'm going to start with that, turn on the fill that in. I'm going to go to my eraser. I'm going to turn on the other ruler, move it out of the way. I'm going to go back to the circular again. off the circular ruler. And then I'm going to draw some more tribal Polynesian inspired designs. Go back to a regular marker for a minute. Let's see, let's turn this up to 24. Actually, let's go to the straight line tool for this. I don't want continuous on for this. Turn that off. Then I'm going to long press to turn my circle ruler back on. Fill that in with my bucket fill tool. Do the same thing a few more times. So yeah, you have to bear with me. This is all going to make sense in a second. Now that I have that, I'm going to go back to my eraser. So for this middle ring here, I'm going to turn off the mirror. And my eraser is going to be my drawing tool now. That's it with the mirror turned off. Everything's going in the same direction. And then I'm going to change the segments down to 12 from 24. I'm going to use a straight line ruler to get a nice straight line where I want to divide these. Turn that off. And go back to drawing with my eraser tool. So then let's add a little bit of shading here. So usually when I do shading, I like to do it on a new layer. That way I can erase it very easily without having to worry about accidentally erasing any of the stuff I've already drawn. So let's go to the shading tool. And the part that I want to put shading onto is this thin sort of line-based design here, which was at 24 rotation. So I'm going to go back to 24 just to keep it looking smooth and consistent. So yeah, having the shading work in conjunction with the rotation tool is pretty awesome. And then I'm going to go to my circle ruler and my eraser. And I'm going to get a nice smooth line right where that starts. And I've got some shading on that little section of the mandala. Looks pretty cool, adds a little bit of depth. If I look at that and say, oh, maybe that shading is a little bit too strong, it's a little too dark, I'm just going to go to that layer and lower the opacity a bit. And that just lightens your shading for you to whatever darkness you want. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Maybe I'm going to take the rotation tool up to 48. Maybe I'll play around with the... We do a marker first. Circle ruler's on. Do that. Then we go to the straight line tool. Oh, I'm going to also turn the mirror off for this. marker back on. Got my circle ruler still happening. Got a nice perfect circle around the outside here. Then I'm going to turn the circle ruler back off using long press. And I'm going to go back to my straight line tool using long press from the marker. Go to my bucket fill. Let's see. Go to another layer. Do a little bit of shading. Switch back to my eraser. I'm going to turn the circle ruler on just to keep this nice and accurate here. And there you go. I'm going to call that a finished design. Definitely a different look from the other mandalas I've shown so far. And this one showcased a bunch of different tools. Okay, so I haven't done anything with the dot work brush yet, so let's incorporate that into this one. We'll start with some in the center. I'm going to fill my center in with dots. And I'm going to switch to my eraser. Use that as my drawing tool again. That's kind of a cool look. Switch back to the marker. And what do I want to do here? Let's turn on the circle ruler. Let's turn off the mirror and let's turn the segments way up. Let's go to 48. So let's go to the straight line tool. Turn the circle ruler back on. Go back to the regular marker. Circle ruler off. Let's go to the bucket fill tool for a second. Let's fill those in. Let's go back to the marker and circle ruler. And let's start getting way up there with the rotations. I'm going to turn the mirror back on. Let's go up to 90. I want to turn the circle ruler off. So as you get real high in the segments, you may want to make your marker a little smaller. Let's go up to 131. It does get a little tight, but it's definitely usable. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with these. Let's go all the way up, 200. I'm going to do this on a different layer so that I can show you something just using this in a second. 200 is a ridiculous amount of segments. It is a ton. But it definitely has its uses. And I'm going to show you an example of what you might do with something like this in an actual tattoo in a second. Yeah, we're quite proud of this. The fact that we have 200 segments on our mandala tool. Unheard of before. As I zoom out a little bit, you might look at the outside of it and be like, what on earth would you do with this? Nobody would want to tattoo this many segments. That is a ton. But if you use your imagination, you will definitely find there are cool things you can do with this many segments. For example, I'm gonna hide this for a second. I'm gonna hide the first part we did. I'm gonna import a picture from my camera roll of the body. This is one of the protoplast body models from Tattoo Smart. Definitely recommend you check that out. Very handy. I usually like to stamp mine out in a different color other than black. Makes it have less opacity. And even if that's too much for you, you can always, now that it's a layer, you can turn down the opacity on the body part if you want to make sure you're not taking away from the drawing. So let's see, I've got that layer. I'm going to duplicate it. And now that I have that, I'm going to transform it and show you the kind of design that you can totally do with this many segments. I'll turn off that entirely so that I can erase the parts I don't need. And make the eraser bigger. Yeah, so on a piece like this, you could absolutely use just the very, very outer edge of the mandala with your amount of rotations cranked way up to 200. And this is absolutely tattooable, definitely usable. So just takes a bit of imagination, and all these crazy things where we've pushed the limits, they for sure have uses. Okay, so let's get really weird now and start playing around with gradient thickness combined with the rotation tool. Let's do 80 rotations. We'll leave the mirror on. Let's enable it. Let's do gradient thickness. We'll do the most simple one, the top to bottom fade. Or let's do bottom to top. Turn the thickness up a little bit. Draw some stuff. So I decided to do the outer row first. That's already pretty cool. Got that really neat gradient thickness happening. So for the next row, I'm going to change the gradient thickness. Let's go from top to bottom instead, and let's add one of our repeats. If you're not sure what these are, you can check out the tutorial number 1, which goes into the entire app. Let's do, 2 is good. And then we'll do the next row. So I'm going to turn my drawing tool down. Switch the gradient thickness back to bottom to top for the next row. I'm going to turn the rotations down a little bit too. Let's do 40-ish. Just turn the gradient off completely for my center. The rotation's low for the center. Turn the thickness of the marker up a bit. So So there's just one example of what you can do with the gradient thickness combined with the rotation tool. Make some real weird, trippy looking mandalas. And there's a ton of other gradient thicknesses that you could be playing with. So explore these and have fun. Come up with something weird and tag us in it on Instagram so we can see it. So for this last one, I'm going to start a new canvas. I'm going to make this one portrait. So it's going to go up and down, and for this one I actually do have a use for the extra bit of space at the top and bottom. So we'll start with the rotation tool, we'll have it mirrored, we'll set the rotations at 12, and I'm going to be combining it with the repeat effect. So if you want to find out more about that, there will be a tutorial coming that's just focusing on the repeat effect. Or you can check out the tutorial number 1, which is an overall view of everything in the app. So let's go vertical since our canvas is sort of lengthwise. I'm going to enable it. We don't want too many segments in this one for this part of the effect, so I'll be right about there. Looks good. As you can see, a whole row of mandalas appears. So that's definitely fun to play with. So this is one of the more impressive aspects of the app, as far as I'm concerned. The ability to have both of those on at the same time and have them work fluidly together. So instead of one mandala appearing, you've got 7 right in front of your eyes. From here, if I wanted to take the design further, I would probably make like a band type design. So I would turn off the rotation. I would turn on my mirror effect. I would probably turn on my straight line ruler. So I'm going to do something that goes straight up and down. So then I would want to fill in those little spaces. Let's do a little lotus flower type design. So then for the outside, let's do a very small detailed thing. So we'll do that by taking the repeat effect, sliding it way down so you get a ton of segments. Draw a little beadwork type thing. And there you go, a little band type design. You can be used in many different places. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to show you guys with the rotation effect. A lot of different types of mandalas you can draw with it, and different techniques and tools that can be combined with it. I'm going to continue doing more of these tutorials for each of the features. So repeat effect, wallpaper effect, and gradient thickness will all be next. Hopefully this has been helpful. It gave you some new ideas to explore in the app on your own. If you're on Instagram, we would love to see the stuff you're making with the app. You can either tag us or you can use the hashtag #MadeWithGeometrica. You can subscribe to this channel to see more tutorials like this one. Thank you for checking this video out, and happy mandala making.